screen.
Thank you.
Can you all see? Okay. Good afternoon. My study is entitled Recurring Emotions and Coping Mechanisms of Parents with Children Having Autism. I'm from Our Lady of Fatima University Graduate School, Philippines, and my name is Nicole Marisi Pascua. I've been a SPED teacher for 4 years now, and I'm handling early intervention. So for the introduction, there's a growing trend in the mental health field to consider the whole family, the psychological well-being of the whole family, not just the child with autism, because as we all know, the spectrums affects the lifestyle of the family. Various accommodations are made just to give the needs of the child with autism. There are also several studies about the parental stress. However, here in the Philippines, we have very limited studies about the challenges, these recurring grieving like emotions, and also the coping mechanisms they may use in the Philippine settings. The purpose of this study is to identify these grieving-like emotions as well as what triggers it, also the coping mechanisms that these parents may use to cope up with these challenges. I would like also to provide awareness and preparedness to these new parents who have child with ASD recently diagnosed. This is the conceptual framework we use. This is developed by Joan K. Blaska. Cyclical grieving is the recurrence of one or more grieving emotions that is part of the grieving process of a parent who have a child with disability. From this framework, we derive questions for the informal and formal interview. We interviewed participants twice, 5 to 7 days interval. We utilized qualitative research, specifically phenomenological design, and we use IPA or Interpretative Phenomenological Analysis to explore and understand the meanings of people assigned to their experiences. We interviewed 13 parents from 10 families who have children with ASD, of course, age range from 12 to 18 years old in 3 private schools in Metro Manila, Quezon City. Philippines, yeah. Themes are clustered and identified as initial diagnosis, grieving experiences, and progressive acceptance. Let's start with the initial diagnosis. Parents anticipated their child's autism or ASD during the early years. Even though they are somewhat prepared, they can't help but feel worried about their child's future. Grieving emotions. Of course, after the diagnosis, there are various emotions felt by the parents. This is where the cyclical grieving starts. So denial, shock, sadness, feeling loss, and fear, helplessness were some of it. ASD interferes with the expectations about their child's future. So it proceeds with strong feelings of regret and disappointment, of course. And intervention. Diagnosis of the doctor is just a confirmation before these parents give the intervention needed of the child. Let's proceed with the grieving experiences. So the events that triggers these recurring emotions, these events cannot be anticipated. These are spontaneous. It triggers occasionally. And all the parents underwent at least one same event in their parenting life. However, the emotions felt and described were different based on their life perspectives. Okay, so let's start with the school setting. Events that they experience under school setting, mostly they feel very disappointed and frustrated because as you can see here in the Philippines, we have a lot or a room to improve when it comes with the training of the special education teachers and therapists. Yeah, so that's why parents feel very, very disappointed this because they should be trained. And also isolation and bullying were only occurred in mainstream schools or in inclusive school settings. Next, events experienced in the home settings. These are the events that sometimes no parents realize, okay, I don't have a typical child. My child has autism. Like for example, they see their child flapping hands. Like there are some thoughts there, like they feel depressed, they feel frustrated, and sometimes not. They question their parenting style. No, why is my child like this? So Next is events that they experience under community settings. Child tantrums, hyperactivity, and comparing their child to a neurotypical child happens only in the early years, during the early years. Uh, of course, they feel worry, especially when their child is yun, having a tantrums outside. For example, the church and the restaurants. While uninformed society, these are negative comments or uh, negative comments from strangers that they don't know that their child has autism or has special needs. Of course, they feel very, very irritated with this person. Sometimes they feel dismay because it's not really out and about in the Philippines. This topic is not really out and about in the Philippines. And also sadness. Let's proceed with the challenges that triggers these recurring emotions. Challenges are the hindrances or problems that these parents encounter. Again, the emotions felt or described by these participants were different based on their perspectives, and an event that's not handled properly may turn into a challenge. Let's start with the child's placement. Uh, Filipino parents tend to jump from one center to another or one school to another to find the holistic, effective program for their child. Because as I've said earlier, we have a lot of room to improve. Also, there's a growing the yeah also there's a growing I mean, parents tend to worry about their child's placement after school or after high school or after center or after 10 years, because there's still no colleges, or there's very few colleges who accept children with autism or vocational courses for these children or students. Next, financial challenges. This is the most cited challenge in the previous studies among parents with child having autism. It's very parents claims that it's very challenging during the early years because they were not prepared. However, during the adolescent years, auxiliary services were lessened and inclusive school were more cheaper. That's why they say that actually it's better, it's better right now because they have less gastos or less financial problems. So they feel ashamed if they don't have money, stress, worry where to get this budget, concern, and uncertainty. Next, under family settings, this is more of the behavioral issue. Because as I've said, here in the Philippines, we're very, very independent, or the parents are very independent. So there were really no trainings. So they feel stress, they don't have patience, they feel very frustrated. No, how am I gonna handle this behavioral issue of my child? Or we have very limited communication, I don't know what to do. So yeah. Next are challenges again under family settings, extra caretaking demands. This is more of finding a secondary caregiver that is lifetime. That is why some parents or some families who don't find a secondary caregiver, mothers tend to give up their careers for the child to attend to the needs. And of course, they feel regretful or dismay. And also more on time management. No, they can sometimes they skip important events such as graduation of their other children or some work for the fathers. As these parents are exposed to these different challenges, they tend to be cautious. So they think about the future. What are the possible challenges? Or like possible abusive people? They're scared, or they have fear. Like, how am I gonna teach sense of danger to my son who's turning 15 years old or 18 years old, and also transition to their adolescent life. So, as the data confirms that parents' grieving is cyclical, they reach a certain level of acceptance that their child is in the spectrum, and they've admitted that some events and challenges still triggers this grieving emotions. Hence, there is no full acceptance. However, the frequency and events of challenges and the intensity of this emotion decreases as both the parent and the child grows old and mature. Hence, the level of progressive acceptance depends on the maturity, personality, and mental well-being of an individual. The more mature the individual, the greater the progressive acceptance is. Therefore, the adjustments needed are easily tolerated, challenges or events are handled healthier, because at this stage, there is already self-correction for the parents. This is our intensity of emotions model. As you can see in the circle, no, a challenge may arise at the same time, or an event and a challenge may arise at the same time. Also, they are connected or correlated. For example, the school setting event and the child placement challenges are related. Now, the arrow pointing up symbolizes that the intensity of the grieving emotion as well as the frequency of events and challenges are higher during the younger years. However, during the adolescent to latter life, these emotions or these events and challenges are decreases or lesser. These are the identified coping mechanisms, effective coping mechanisms used by our participants. So parent support group, investing relationship, family, and peers. This is more on the future. So that someday someone will take care of their child, when they're not really around. Attend trainings and seminar, regardless of the religion, being spiritually stable. Selecting desirable environment and withdrawal from undesirable environment. That is why they choose the school, or they choose the party they go to, or they choose the church wherein their child is more accepted, for them to have lesser events, the lesser negative events, no, for them. Also recreational or hobbies, also having a parent and teacher active collaboration. Then we identified these factors. These factors are beyond parents' control, but it reduces stress and anxiety to these parents. So these are having an inclusive environment, of course, child's maturity, independence, and severity, being financially stable, having healthy marital relationship, finding an entrusting caregiver, as well as ensuring the future of the child. This is our cyclical grieving model. As you can see, the initial diagnosis is the very first grieving experience that the parents experienced. And then shattered dreams only occurred once, unlike in Blaska's model. Ayan, so grieving emotion and then progressive acceptance, coping mechanism, grieving experiences. In conclusion, this study presented two models, the intensity of emotions model, as well as the cyclical grieving model, that as the data confirms, parents grieving is cyclical, sorry. Thus, they only reach a certain level of self-acceptance that their child's autism is lifetime. So, progressive acceptance continues as grieving experiences occurs and grieving emotions are felt. Parents' psychological well-being plays a big role in perceiving these grieving experiences as well as grieving emotions. So these coping mechanisms and factors identified help parents with ASD have better perspective with their situation and have better character development. So these are my references. I would like to thank the chairperson, administrator, organizer, and participants. If you have questions or if you have time, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.